I don't know if there's a worse position to be in, the last speaker of the last panel after lunch. I will try to be mercifully brief and also try to bring some energy to our room so that we can close with the energy and the spirit that we need to continue this work. I want to tie a few things in together to sort of, I guess, tie in both of these panels and my two amazing speakers here. But before that, I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the Gathering for Justice. And I want to ask that everyone go and check out thegatheringforjustice.org, which is our website. And we also have a social networking site. It's not as well known as Facebook, but it's a way for our young people to build relationships with one another and for us to really see who we are. We like to say at the Gathering that we call ourselves SNCC 2.0. And I want to know how many people here know what SNCC was? Okay, so I'm going to take the opportunity. SNCC was an organization called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and they were a group of 30 young people, although if you ask anyone who was in the 60s, like everyone was marching with Martin, right? It's like the big joke was if everyone who says they marched with Martin actually marched, there would have been several million people in DC that day. But it's a group of 30 young people who were trained in nonviolence, in Gandhian nonviolence, in Kingian nonviolence. And they were the group that did the freedom rides, that rode the buses throughout the South. They were the young men that you see crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge and getting on their knees as they were beaten mercifully by police. They are in a majority of the pictures of young men being hit with hoses. They're those folks. They were really the heart of the nonviolence movement. They were not alone. They worked with young people from CORE, from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, but they were a core group of people who were dedicated fiercely to this idea of nonviolence. And it was in that dedication that after the first buses were bombed during the freedom rides, they went to our founder, Harry Belafonte, and said, we need money for more buses because we're going to continue to ride. And really pushed the civil rights movement in ways that I don't think could have been done. And that's what we hope to do with the Gathering as well. We see child incarceration as our modern day slavery. We see the fact that there are over 15,000 young people under the age of 12 sitting in prison in this country as a huge moral dilemma for our country. The fact that 1 out of 4 black men will go to jail is a moral crisis. And part of the problem is that because of the way we've been sold and desensitized, and a lot of what Beef was talking about, we think that these folks need to be in jail and that is where they should be for us to have a healthier society. And we at the Gathering say it is making our society more sick. And we fall to moral lows every day as long as we will look at young men like Juan Pacheco, young men like Beef, young men like the ones we see in our streets and think that they are better off in jail than becoming working members of our society. So we at the Gathering for Justice, in using Kingian nonviolence, and in being and in understanding that you cannot make actual change until you stop business, we understand that by putting that ideology out front and center can actually stop the rail to jail and close down juvenile facilities. And so that's what we do at the Gathering for Justice. But the outcome of that is that we build black, brown, red, yellow communities everywhere. When we first got started, we got started because Mr. Belafonte saw a 5-year-old girl being arrested in her school. 5. How many people here know 5-year-olds? So, like they're little, they're small, and they're 5, and they sometimes throw temper tantrums, right, and things like this. And so she was throwing a tantrum in class. 4 cops walked into the school, bent her over her desk, took her little arms, put them behind her, attempted to put handcuffs on her, but she had little 5-year-old arms. So the handcuffs would not stay. So then they went out and they got the plastic ones, because they had to make sure that they could hold her down. A 5-year-old, watch out, 60 pounds now. You want to go home alive every night, don't you, police officers, right? So they handcuffed her, brought her out to the police car, shackled her little 5-year-old feet, and threw her in the police car. At this point, her mother was there. This little girl was in terror. Terror. Her mother is there. Her mother says, "Can you give her to me?" No, she's already been placed under arrest. You can meet her down at the station. So then she gets to the station, and guess what? Being unruly in class, praise God, is not against the law. Because God knows if it was, I'd probably still be in jail. Most of us would be, right? So after putting her through this trauma, this girl threw a tantrum. She didn't hit anyone. She didn't take, the scissors and chase someone around. She threw a tantrum, got to the jail. There was nothing to charge her with. They called all the way up to the state's attorney general, hoping that there would be something in the statute to charge this 5-year-old child so that they could complete their job. Thank God there was nothing. But the question is not, how can we get better cops? I think that is a question. But that is not the question. The question is, where was everybody along the way that got there, that got her there? Right? Where was a teacher standing in that school saying, "What are you doing to this 5-year-old child?" Where was the guidance counselor getting on her knee, asking this 5-year-old child why she felt the need to have the tantrum, what was going on in her little heart and her little head that was making her upset? Where was her pastor? Where was the community? Where were we? Where were we? We deal with a lot of young people whose stories are very similar to this. The one that breaks my heart and gets me very emotional is this 11-year-old girl who right now today is sitting in jail in Milwaukee for prostitution. This is a child that couldn't consent to sex if she wanted to. She's 11. And again, every step along the way, no one adult stopped and said, "What are we doing?" No one adult said, "Why are we arresting her for prostitution," right? Why are we charging her with prostitution? Why are we finding her guilty of prostitution? And why are we sentencing her to go to a juvenile facility for prostitution? And who is she going to be when she comes out of jail? So it's these questions that we ask at the Gathering for Justice. And I wanted to talk a little bit about who we were, but now I really want to get into the meat and potatoes of why we're doing this at the Gathering and what youth mobilization looks like for the 21st century, because I think that is a question that we need to take on. And I think it's also a question that we need to make sure that we're on the same page with a few things. So I'm just going to throw out a few assumptions. The first assumption is that the baton has been dropped from the feel-good, from the amazing liberation movements that were going on throughout the world in the time that SNCC was happening in the US, right? One of the stories that I love that Mr. Belafonte says often is how when he got down to Mississippi and saw Bob Moses and Fannie Lou Hamer and saw how burnt out they were, he put them on a plane and he flew them out to see Nkrumah, right? To see the liberation and the start of a new nation. Liberation was happening throughout the world, and it still is. However, I think that we've dropped the baton in having people understand that it can happen. And I'm often asking people, would Jesus have been able to turn water into wine if he lived in a time where people didn't believe you could? Would King have been able to have been the prophet that Martin Luther King was if he was living in a time where he was a nigger? I don't know, but I don't know if we honestly believe in the idea of a non-violent movement, in the idea of radical, progressive change. Do we actually believe in the hope and change we think Barack means? And are we willing to hold Barack accountable to bring us that agenda of hope and change because we really believe in it? The second assumption or question that I want to throw out is, how uncomfortable are we willing to be? How uncomfortable are we willing to be? When we talk about the disproportionate minority confinement, when we talk about young people going to jail at the levels that they are going with, and when we talk about needing to stop that system, it's going to take a lot more than signing a couple of petitions. It's going to take a lot more than, putting your dollar in the hat, than feeling really good about the stuff that Juan Pacheco says and being like, wow, that Juan, he's amazing. We should bring him out to speak somewhere. It's going to take us calling Juan saying, yo, dog, I'm in Fairfax. Do you want to walk me along your streets? It's going to take us being uncomfortable, walking in neighborhoods that we never thought we would want to walk in. Being willing to maybe lose your purse when you're walking there, right? I mean, let's be honest. Let's not over-romanticize any of this. How uncomfortable are we willing to be? Are we willing to walk out of UCLA? Are we willing to put our futures on the line? A majority of young leaders in this country, when they were doing the civil rights movement, walked away from colleges. Trust me, I'm sure back in 1953, being a black person at the University of Michigan and telling your mother that you're gonna leave to go register pig farmers in Mississippi did not seem like a smart move. And yet, John Lewis got a pretty good job out of it. John Conyers got a pretty good job out of it. What are we willing to give up for our liberation and for our fellow man? The last assumption that I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about is that we don't know our young people. We do not know our young people. And I don't even know if we want to, I live in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm often on the train. I'm on the train, and you see these kids walking on the train, right? And now they're wearing tight pants below their ass, which I don't really understand, which lets me know I'm getting old. Because I'm like, wait, they're supposed to be tight now? Oh, okay. And I see these kids, and they're talking about something, and they're being loud, and they're saying bitches and hoes, and things that you say when you're 15 and you want to be cool and you want to show that you know something and everything. And I find myself wanting to be like, shh, sit down. And I find myself not doing it. And it's something that breaks my heart. And it's like, why am I afraid to walk up to this little boy and to love him enough to be a good aunt to him? Right? Why am I not doing that? It was done to me. I remember the first time I cut school. All of a sudden my phone started ringing in my house. I didn't get it because no one was supposed to be home. I was cutting school. And so me and my friends are, getting into mischief, what you do. And all of a sudden on the answering machine, that was back in the days of answering machines, I hear, Malia, this is your mother. The neighbor just saw you going into the house and she is coming over to pick you up, right? The whole community was like in on your raising. Why don't we Why don't we do that anymore? Why don't we want to know who our young people are? I'm going to spend the last few minutes I have talking about who our young people are and then give you some websites. So our young people, the oldest of our young people, if you want to say we're looking at 35 and under, and now being 32, I'm like, young people, 40 and under. And as Jay-Z says, what does he say? 40 is the new 30, 20 is the new, something like that. But basically it means I'm 22, however he puts it. The oldest of the youngest, guess what their first president is that they remember?
Bill Clinton.
Carter, wrong.
Clinton.
Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is the first president that they have a chance to vote for. Bill Clinton also played the saxophone and talked about that does he wear boxers or briefs? Right? Bill Clinton's the first president they mention, or they remember. Their parents are the collateral damage of the Vietnam War, right? Our parents, or me being the older part of this and under, fought in Vietnam, came home, and what happened? We got crack introduced to our community. And the way I break down generations is it's like pre-crack, post-crack, pre-internet, post-internet. Right, like two major things that mark your time, and a lot of our generation, especially folks around my age, distinctly remember when we used to walk down the street and just see like the homeless person, and then distinctly remember walking down the street and seeing the homeless person start nodding, being like, what's this? Oh, that's crack. Okay, crack's in our neighborhood now. Okay, great.
There's more heroin.
Right, the H nod, right?
H nod.
They are young people who are at the forefront of MTV, of cable, right? Now, let's go to the youngest end, which is the ones that really make me feel bad. These folks don't even remember Atari or Betamax or Duck Hunt on Nintendo or any of the things that was high tech for me. But if you look at the generations as far as the pre-internet and post-internet, you see a huge difference in connectivity. And so what you see is that the internet was brought to me when I was in college, so it was a research tool for me, right? Like, yes, I had Malia Lazu at emerson.edu, but I primarily saw the internet as a one-way form of communication. Our young people coming up after us see the internet as 2.0, as a two-way, as a three-way, as a four-way street, as a community, as a place to talk, to relationship build, which is very, very different, because what it means is that first, they are hyper-personalized. Everything is hyper-personalized. We used to wear Adidas without shoelaces because that's what we saw Run DMC do. Kids now can go to Nike.com and build their own Nike sneakers, right? They can never listen to music that they don't want to listen to, right? They walk around with their own personalized jukeboxes in their pockets called iTunes, right? They're able to create their own avatar that will represent them in everything that is on the internet. And I put this out because when looking at how we engage youth, we do it the exact opposite. We hand them something that is nothing like they've been asked to interact with before. And then when they don't do it, we call them apathetic. How many people here believe in youth apathy? Yay, I'm glad a couple of the folks raised their hands, because I was going to say, oh no, just someone raise your hand so I can tell you why you're wrong. Youth apathy for me was always a funny one, and when I first started doing voter work, it was all I heard. Oh, youth voters are so apathetic. And I thought to myself, apathetic? Here we are working at McDonald's at some BS job for $5 an hour. We get off of McDonald's, we go and we party to spend our little $5 doing something, and then we get up in the morning and we go to school and we do it all again. We're actually not very lazy. We're just not into what you're asking me to do, right? activism, social justice work, campaigning is the only industry that blames its consumer for not buying its product and its message. If Nike had the same type of sales that our democracy has every election, Nike wouldn't say, oh, young people are lazy. Just put the same Air Maxes out there. No, they would be like, what the hell? 50% of our consumer base did not come and buy this product. Focus groups, bring people in. Michael Jordan's out. Shaquille O'Neal is in. What do we need to change? How do we need to get people to buy this? And yet what we do is say, oh, well, you know, young people are just, you know, they're apathetic. They're just not really excited about anything. And then Gen 6 happens, and a whole bunch of black kids, some of the most apathetic that you can find, jump on a bus, take a 16-hour bus ride on a small little bathroom, go all the way down to Louisiana to fight a noose being hung on a tree and a man being arrested in a town that they've never heard of and a man that they've never heard of. That's not apathetic. That was just something that they were actually into. It was something that they were allowed to build, to create, to make their own, to put their own stamp on it. That's what we have to do. We cannot create these prescriptions and give them to young people. They've never had that experience before. Not only that, I wouldn't say that the solutions we've been saying have been working, so maybe we want some new ideas. I end with a story. I was born by a river. No, I end with a giving you a plan. Then it is obvious that we don't have the plan yet. And therefore the agenda is to find the agenda. My brothers and sisters, this is where we are. Our agenda is to find the agenda. And we need to come together, black, brown, white, yellow, red, plaid, whatever. We need to come together to see our common humanity and to understand that it is within that common humanity that our solutions lie, and that it only takes a few of us. It only takes a few of us who actually believe that you can turn water into wine.